Tim on the podcast, and basically you're doing some research in harm reduction for anabolic steroid use, right? And so what did you reached out to me about as a participant in your current research? Tell us a bit about your research.
So my PhD was looking at obviously harm reduction in terms of performance enhancing drug use. Now it comes from a bit of a socio-cultural framework because I've got an exercise science and applied sciences background, but then moving into psychology, into that socio-cultural, why are men particularly inclined to change their appearance, and in what ways do they do that? The research that sort of we've discussed a few times was looking at firstly how to bolster those harm reduction resources for men who are using performance and image enhancing drugs or anabolic androgenic steroids, and then more recently chatted about women and performance and image enhancing drug use, and whether that's a growing issue, whether it's a worry, whether we've got adequate strategies in place. So I think in terms of men, we don't have adequate strategies in place.
Okay.
And then in terms of women, well, how could we, if they're an even more marginalised group than men who are using? So
what's the issues we're trying to solve, or what are the problems you've seen that you're trying to resolve?
Well, we know that, and we've spoken about this, that prohibition's probably not working very well. And in terms of people using these compounds and things like that, it's going to happen, particularly in strength-based sports. Particularly, being research has shown that we've got increases in recreational gym goers using these compounds, and it would be, it's always good to make sure that it's a safe environment. So I think there's a few levels of need here. There's the need for bloodborne virus and STI sort of safety, and that's done through needles, making sure that people know what needles to use, what tips to get for the oils, how to swab the site, etc., etc. So there needs to be education around that, and our needle service providers here in Brisbane and Gold Coast and Sunny Coast are pretty good around that. So I provide a few trainings there for a few organisations, but certainly in more rural areas, it's still we need to do a bit more work there. In terms of, once you've got that covered, then I suppose it's compound selection, isn't it? So making sure that nobody's going from 0 to 100 and deciding, trenbolone is the first place I'm going to go, and I'm going to do a gram a week, because I think that's obviously that's not a starting point, is it? Where do they get that information from? Is that information vetted in any way? Is it? It'd be nice to see. We've got forums, we've got good coaches and things like that. It'd be nice to see some more research or health-related research embedded into those practices. But obviously at that level, that's all taboo. So what do? Well, okay, what we can do is monitor maybe blood work, but people are still struggling to understand how to interpret that because it's so far out of the norm, isn't it? So in terms of coaching GPs or doctors in this area, we look at, or at least I look at, okay, if you don't want to prescribe, if you don't want to, take away that criminal element, that's fine. And they've got their own reasons for that around ethics and other things. But in terms of monitoring the patient, I think at least in our state, there's a lot more openness coming through now. So they're willing to look at those bloods. They're willing to check, liver function, general health, have a chat with the guy,
So what level are we trying to implement these strategies at? Are we taking it from, are you taking it to try and, like you said, the peer-to-peer kind of approach, or are we going to are you aiming to go through like from the levels of the medical industry filtering down? I mean, what kind of, at what level are we trying to implement some of these harm reduction strategies?
I think, if you can imagine like octopus tentacles coming out, then I run a few trainings for general practitioners, getting this stuff across. Then by doing so, anybody comes to talk to me about anything, I can say, I've got somewhere that you can go that's safe, that doesn't have the stigma, and they're open to this, to at least monitoring you. Okay. And then at the needle service providers, there's that training there. This is how to engage with this group. And then sometimes they don't want to engage. Sometimes they just want to go in, grab their needles, go. So give them the right stuff and leave them alone.
Yeah.
Because that's what works, and we want to do what works. And then at the next level, I think Victoria, for example, has a great peer support program where they've got a steroid peer education support worker. Now, she directly deals with that population group, whether it's just dropping off some supplies, but also checking in on them, seeing how they're going,
Right.
seeing what they need, what's going on, monitoring trends in terms of what's going on at a black market level, what compounds are